This video is going to be discussing a God Roll craft for one of the Season of the Wish weapons. For those that just want to see that, and skip to the timestamps. For the rest of you, can go into the information, etc. Just a reminder though, if you're not subscribed, make sure that you do hit that subscribe button for more analytical content and to listen to Voice of Reason. But other than that, I can go into the gun that I'm recommending. The gun that we're focusing on today is a weapon called Supercluster, which is a Season of the Wish weapon. A disclaimer for you, just to tell you this. This video series I've been doing about the God Roll crafts for the last 1 to 2 weeks is focusing only on the Season of the Wish weapons. That includes the star-crossed weapons with the leaves on them, right? And then the Season of the Wish weapons, these types, Supercluster, the Strand Fusion, the Pulse Rifle, the Bow. It's just focusing on all those weapons because everyone's going to be crafting these, or should be, and have an easier time to have access to craft. There are better raid quality weapons that beats out some of the Season of the Wish weapons. So just so that you know that when I'm talking, right, I'm talking about in the realms of seasonal weapons. I'm not talking about the realms of raid quality weapons. These are two different categories, all right? Just so you know that. So, Supercluster, Slug Shotgun, it's a strand weapon. Now, you need to understand the kinetic slot. The kinetic slot houses kinetic type weapons, stasis weapons, and strand weapons, right? Which is obviously a weird situation. They shoved that into the kinetic slot mainly because the energy slot is it's clustered up. There's so many weapon archetypes in the energy slot that they decided to put them in the kinetic slot. The problem with that is though, is kinetic weapons do inherently more damage than a stasis and strand weapon. It's actually 15% more damage. 15% is a lot. Like that's the equivalent of some damage perks. So this is like, at this point, we've been since Lightfall now. So we're approaching a while since how long this has been. They need to revert this change back to 5%. And I hope that they do like a 5% penalty. That's fine. Like what they've done with spike grenades is exactly what they need to do with this situation. I hope that they buff strand and stasis special weapons in the kinetic slot. This includes snipers and shotguns. Please do that for us. Let's just hope. Let's build this weapon in the hopes that they do that. So that you know that like a slug shotgun like Fortissimo or Heritage is inherently at base doing 15% more damage. Just so you know that. So getting on to the God Roll craft. So let's talk about the short answer for people who want a quick answer on this, and then we'll go more in depth about this. So Supercluster, the God Roll craft will, as your frame, would either be a +10 handling or a +10 reload. Handling's actually quite an important stat on slug shotguns, but if you want the +10 reload, I wouldn't argue with it. I would say either or. But just so you know, we do have loader perks on gauntlets, so you can buff up your reload speed quite a lot by just putting on a loader on or two, or even running a reload exotic. So I actually value a +10 handling in this situation, and I'll explain the stats as we go on. Arrowhead Brake for a good recoil direction on the slug. Assault Mag for a 5 RPM buff, right? Which isn't a lot, but I do inherently like Slug Shotgun on a moment-to-moment gameplay basis. Like when you're firing the shotgun, you sort of notice that it is firing a slightly little quicker. Not that much, but enough to notice it. Right, and it increases stability quite a lot. But if you want to use a different mag option, I'm not arguing with you there either, but I will argue on these two perks. So we got Reconstruction in this column and Vorpal Weapon in the second. Reconstruction is the best. It is the best perk in this column, right? Well, you've got 4 times the charm and you've got slide shot. 4 times the charm, I mean, it depends on what boss you're up against. You should be hitting your crits anyways, but Reconstruction on a slug is very powerful. Like a slug shotgun should only really have 6 rounds when you start to fight a boss, or 7 if you got backup mag. But having double that is very, very powerful for doing nothing, right? And in any case, you only hold 17 or 18 bullets with a slug shotgun anyways, so you're only gonna, you're gonna do 50% of your damage right away, and then you do your reloads. So you've got 4 times the charm. It is a consideration, but you're not only ever doing DPS. Sometimes you're up against a champ, just trying to kill a champ, or minor enemies and stuff like that. So Reconstruction, in my opinion, is still best in slot However, the 4th time's a charm is nice, but no, Reconstruction still wins. Because there's not many Reconstruction slug shotguns in the game, so you may as well do it. And in any case, there's another shotgun that plays the role of the getting crits better than this one, which I'll talk about after. Vorpal Weapon in the second column, I believe to probably be the best. Vorpal Weapon's 15% buff. 15% is something. It will actually make it that you are equal damage to a heritage with no buff. That's good, because we know that heritage puts out a lot of damage. I've been using a heritage with no buff for quite some time, and to be able to match that with another shotgun that's not raid quality is powerful. And you can actually up its damage by using surrounded, which is a bigger buff, right? A lot bigger. The problem with surrounded is if you run surrounded, you need to keep enemies alive. They're going to flinch you, meaning that you'll do body shot damage with your shotgun and lose precision damage anyways. Or if the ads are killed, guess what? Your big buff that you just had is now 0, which Vorpal's more than 0. So surrounded in the ideal world, if you're playing in a science lab and you've got 3 acolytes around you that are idle and they're not bothering you so much and you're hitting a boss with crits, surrounded on paper is better. But in the real world, in the real reality of D2, Vorpal's better because the perk up time's all the time. It's 100% perk up time. Surrounded is not 100% perk uptime because real world factors come into play when you use surrounded. You need to have the perfect boss with the perfect amount of enemies surrounding that boss and you need to keep them alive. Now in a fire team this is a little bit better to pull off. It's solo wise, depending on what you're doing. It just depends on the boss and your surroundings. The answer would be have a surrounded shotgun and a Vorpal shotgun. Because sometimes you might be just using the shotgun to kill a champ, which there may well be enough ads around that champion to kill him quick. So surrounded shotgun, if it's an ad clear mini boss targeted shotgun, then surrounded's actually okay. It's very good. But if you want a shotgun to be all rounder, then the Vorpal's still going to do extra damage to a champ, and it's going to do a good DPS phase for you as well, especially when paired with Anarchy. So I believe for most of you, you need to put Vorpal on the gun. You need to bite the bullet and say, all right, I'm getting less of a damage bonus, but it's up all the time on bosses and champs. And ultimately, that's all you really want. And we're going to get it. We should get a strand and stasis buff to specials. It should eventually happen, right? So understanding the stats, you've got impact, which is not affected. You've got range, stability, handling, reload. Right. Range isn't that much of a factor on a pinpoint slug because, well, I'm going to show you at the end. There's a test between a heritage 88 stat range heritage versus a Supercluster 65 stat, and there's barely any difference in it. So don't worry about range. Stability and handling, I mean, stability again, they're quite stable enough as they are, but it's kind of handling. I think either handling or reload, because handling, a higher handling shotgun increases its aim speed and pulling it out quicker, and it's going to increase damage that way. So I think a high handling slug is important. Reload, I mean, the reload's quite low on this Supercluster, so I wouldn't argue with you also if you put a plus 10 reload on that, right? Because you've still got high handling anyways. So it's up to you between either handling or reload for that intrinsic. But that's understanding the stats. So what other slug shotguns have you got in the kinetic slot? Well, you haven't got many. You've got heritage, which is craftable. This one hasn't got a damage perk and it's got reconstruction. So if you got reconstruction recombination, that's going to be the best slug kinetic in the game. Reconstruction recombination, and that will be the best. But this video series isn't focusing on raid crafted weapons. It's focusing on the Season of the Wish weapons. But I just thought I would mention that. Then you've got a stasis slug, which has triple tap focused fury, which is going to do more damage than Supercluster with a Vorpal, because, well, it should overall. But the thing with focused fury is it takes time to proc it, but it is a 20% buff, right? So you've got that, but it's going to be in the same situation as Supercluster as it does inherently less damage. So in other words, we're putting Vorpal on a Supercluster to match a base heritage, right? That's all we're doing. This gun doesn't have reconstruction, no reprieve, but Supercluster does, which makes reconstruction Supercluster a better, more usable shotgun over no reprieve, in my opinion. Then you've got Blasphemer. Blasphemer is not that good, honestly. Dual load is kind of unique on it though, but I wouldn't recommend this as a slug, to be honest. There's not enough good perks on it. And Fortissimo, a Vanguard old pinnacle weapon, so I believe you can pick this out of collections. This is a monster of a slug. It's a very, very good slug shotgun. If you're putting a slug on for DPS mainly, then you want to be running this because it's got 5 times the charm. Frenzy's a 15% buff, so it's gonna do more. It's gonna do 15% more than Supercluster, and it's got 5 times the charm. Very, very good shotgun, which I'll show you a test of that as well. So those are what shotguns you have, slug shotguns. You haven't got a lot of them, right? So it's sort of, if you haven't got Heritage crafted, then you do need to craft Supercluster. And also craft it anyways, because they may buff special weapons. But that's my information on the slug. The next upcoming clips will be just damage comparison tests between slug, the Heritage, Fortissimo, and Supercluster. And then a little nice range test, just showing you that range isn't all that important on a slug shotgun. So this is just going to be a quick damage preview of the gun and how it compares to the other slug shotguns that I've specified. For all clips, we didn't use any surges, no revitalize and blast. The only thing we had on was solo operator. That was it. No damage buffs at all. So we're hitting for 44,381 with Supercluster, right, against this boss. We'll just simulate a rough damage number. Like this isn't, like I say, a full-on test. It's just to compare the two, to prove it to you that it's decent. And if you pair it with Anarchy, obviously the damage will be a lot more, but we're just trying to compare. So we got 719k with Supercluster, right? Now, as I said, we're going to do it with Heritage now, but Heritage does 15% more base damage. Now, obviously, if this was with recombination, then the damage would be way higher. But this is just a base Heritage with no damage bonus. We're hitting for the exact same number. So in actual reality, a base Heritage with no damage is the same damage as Supercluster, basically, right? But that's based on you not crafting the gun. They'll be the same, right? Basically the same. So there's a lot of power in that because Supercluster is a world drop, a seasonal drop, and being able to get a Reconstruction slug for basically free, in my opinion, is really powerful for the average player who does not have the gun, right? Does not have Heritage. We'll do the same test, right? But this time with Fortissimo. Now this is a world drop, if you like. Well, it's from the Vanguard, but you can pick it up from collections if you've had it. You want to make sure that you use this, right? If you haven't got like a good damage based slug, because obviously it's 4 times the charm. Frenzy, which is a 15% buff. It's going to do way more damage than what Supercluster does. But the downside of this gun is it's not that good for running and gunning. It's just for damage phases. Whereas the Supercluster is good for it's okay for damage phases, and it's a good running and gunning shotgun against champs and trash mobs, etc. But the damage is going to be way higher because it's a kinetic and it's got frenzy and it's got 5 times the charm. Look at how much more damage that does than the rest and than the other two. Now just a quick range test. So at maximum range, when we get it right, I believe it's 17,937. We're doing it in this section at the glaive area, right? So look at that. Look at the amount of range you get on this. This is an 88 stat range stat Heritage. You get so much range on pinpoint slugs. Now we compare it to a less ranged Supercluster, and you'll see that the range is like similar between the two. So I'm just proving it to you that you don't need to spec for range. It's handling or reload that you spec for. Look, very similar range drop-offs. You know, it is going to be slightly worse, but not that much worse. That was a video on this. Hope you enjoy. Thank you.